Attention! This makes absolutely no sense. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Zander's Facts.
Oh, yes, it is. Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome in to the latest edition of the Zander's Facts podcast. I am, of course, the aforementioned Zander. Welcome into episode 25 of the most factual podcast in the world. If you can't tell, I am hype.
Really?
Because something big just happened, and I'll tell you what in a second. But welcome in once again to episode 25 of the Zander's Facts podcast, the quarter century mark. How about that? Episode 25, recording Wednesday, July 21st, the week of, actually recording on Wednesday, July 21st. We're doing an early morning style here to get Zander's Facts out to you, and I'll explain why in a second. But remember, if you want to support the Zander's Facts podcast, if you like the facts, thank you all for listening, and remember, click that follow button, click that download button, rate, review, and then go on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, like you have it already, and then go on Zander's Facts Podcast. That's Zander with the Z. Follow, like, subscribe, retweet, Reddit thread, I don't even know. And most importantly, remember to spread the facts. Except just don't get COVID on anybody, because that's a big deal right now. And we're going to talk about that. But first,
Here it comes!
why am I recording this so early? In the morning. It is literally Wednesday the 21st, the day this podcast comes out. And why am I so hype? Well, something big happened. Last night, I guess, Tuesday night, big game happened. If you don't know what I'm talking about, buckle up. Game 6 of the 2021 NBA Finals took place on Tuesday night, and it was a doozy. Let's talk about it. Because, as we have mentioned for the entire length of this podcast, it's a quarter century long now, 25 episodes. We're talking about the NBA. And the finals, the championship series in basketball, came to a close last night. Game 6, what? I thought there was supposed to be 7 games. No, there were 6 games. Because it's the Bucks against the Suns, as you already well know. And in Game 6, the Bucks were looking to clinch their first championship since 1971. Game 6 took place in Milwaukee at the Deer District. They were up 3-2 on the Suns. Remember, back last week when we did the podcast, they had played 3 games, and the Suns had won the first 2, but the Bucks came back and won that third one when the series went to Milwaukee. So last week, the Suns were up 2-1. Now, heading into Game 6, the Bucks were up 3-2 because they had won 3 straight in the series after the Suns won the first 2.
Good to know.
So, the Suns wanted to extend the series to a Game 7, which would send the series back to Phoenix on Thursday night. However, here's what happened. First quarter, in the first 5 minutes of the game, in the first quarter, the Suns only scored 2 points. I know, abysmal.
Get that out of here.
And the Bucks ended up ahead in that portion at the end of the first quarter too. And in those first 5 minutes, the two teams combined for 7 turnovers, which is the most in any finals game to start a finals game in 25 years.
Fact!
By the second quarter, though, the Suns had come back. They'd even up the score. And then into halftime, they took a 5-point lead. The score was 47-42 at the half. However, when the third quarter came on, it turned into the Giannis show, as it rightfully should have. He scored 20 points in the quarter, but by the end, the two teams were still tied at 77 at the end of the third quarter. Giannis scored 20 points in a quarter. It is the second time in this series that he has done that in a finals quarter. The last time that a player scored 20 points in a single quarter in a finals game was done in 1993 by a boy you might know, Michael Jordan. How about that?
How about that?
Into the fourth quarter now, where the Bucks took the lead early. They didn't trail for any of the fourth quarter. They didn't let it go. It went down to the wire, though, because with 1:14 to play, the Bucks only led by 4 after Jay Crowder made 2 free throws, and it looked like, oh, this is going to get tense. But Chris Middleton made a crazy jumper, I don't even know, and the Bucks, they sealed the deal. They won the game 105-98. And for the first time in exactly 50 years, the Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
Congratulations.
I know. Crazy, the Bucks are champions. Who could have predicted that? We're going to get to that in a second, because first, for the Suns, Chris Paul had 26 points. He led the way for the Suns in Game 6. Devin Booker had 19. Jay Crowder had 15, and he had 13 rebounds. But Devin Booker, in the previous 2 games, Games 4 and 5, he scored 82 combined points, which is the most by any player in finals history who lost those games. The previous was 80 by your boys, LeBron James and John Havlicek. Havlicek!
Disgusting!
But it wasn't the Suns who won. No, it was the Bucks. And the finals MVP, who had the game of his life in Game 6, Giannis Antetokounmpo. You know who I'm talking about. The Greek freak.
True that.
He was a freak last night. 50. I'm not messing up that. 50 points.
Wow.
14 rebounds. And 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Count them. 5 blocks. Insane.
Whoa.
There's a ton of stats I've got on Giannis here, so hold on. He had his 12th game this postseason with at least 30 points and 10 rebounds, which is tied with Elgin Baylor, your boy, for second most in a single postseason. The first is 13, your boy Shaquille O'Neal, the doctor. And then, when he scored 40 points, he became the first player to record 40 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 blocks in any playoff game since Shaq did that in 2001. That stood for 20 years. And then, Giannis became the first player to have 50 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 blocks in a playoff game since blocks were first tracked in 1973. He also became the 7th player in NBA history to have 50 points in a finals game, and the previous 2 who did that were LeBron in 2018 and back in 93 when Michael Jordan was going off. So, I mean, he didn't just have an all-time game. He had an all-time series, an all-time playoffs.
It's all true.
This man, he's a 2-time MVP. He won finals MVP. It was incredible. He scored 33 points in the second half, becoming the first player in over 40 years to record multiple 30-point halves in a single NBA Finals series. He did that once before in another game in the finals. It's literally insane. But most importantly, he didn't struggle from the free throw line. We've talked about how terrible Giannis has been from the free throw line, even though Ben Simmons has been worse, and we'll be like, well, who would you rather have, Giannis or Ben Simmons? You'd rather have Giannis, because in Game 6, he shot a free throw 19 times. He made 17 of those. I don't know the percentage because I'm not a math whiz, but that's a very high percentage, especially for a player who shot 68.5% from the line in the regular season, and it won them the game. And also for the Bucks, Chris Middleton, the boy, got 17. Crazy Eyes Bobby Portis got 16. Drew Holiday got 12. But it was those aren't that impressive because Giannis got 47.6% of all the points the Bucks scored in Game 6. I mean, that's literally insane.
It's true.
And the Bucks ended up winning the 2021 NBA Finals. I wonder where I've heard that before. Well, you might want to go back a couple podcasts because after they won, it reminded me of something. It reminded me of all the previous predictions I've made regarding these playoffs here on this podcast, the Zander's Facts podcast. Let's go into that a little bit, because before the playoffs even started, I picked the Bucks to win the finals. That's right, your boy, Zander, picked the Bucks to win the finals before a playoff game had even been played. But then in the first round, I went 7 for 8 in picking, not to brag, but I did. And the one I got wrong was my Western Conference prediction. That just, ugh. And then after the Mavericks lost in the first round, my only first round loss, I picked the Suns to go to the finals. They went to the finals.
True.
In the conference finals, I correctly picked those when the conference finals came out. And then when we had our finals preview, I picked the Bucks to win. Of course, I wasn't going back. Me and Hillbilly picked the Bucks to win. Actually, Hillbilly and I picked the Bucks to win. Both of us did before the playoffs even began. So there you go. Zander's facts, Hillbilly's facts. But something Hillbilly did not do was pick the correct amount of games the Bucks would win in before the finals began. Somebody on this podcast did, though. I wonder who that was. Well, if you go back 2 weeks, episode 23, to whatever, I don't even know what I was doing, I picked Zander, that the Bucks would win in 6. And somebody on my podcast told me, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll win in 7. Well, guess what happened?
Tell me.
The Bucks won in 6 games. They lost the first 2 in Phoenix. They won the next 2 in Milwaukee. They stole the next game in Phoenix, and then they go back home. Elimination game for the Suns. If the Bucks win it, they win the finals. Guess what happened? They won the finals, as I predicted.
Who?
Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome, because I think that I can now rightfully claim myself a new nickname. What could that nickname be? Zander, you are amazing at facts, predictions. What are you going to do? Well, I have decided that from now on, I shall be known as the King of Facts.
You dummy.
Why? Because, remember this, back in March, when we did, that was early days of Zander's Facts, back when Zander was just a baby, we did March Madness predictions. One member of this podcast predicted before any game in the NCAA tournament happened that Baylor was going to win the national championship. Guess what happened? Baylor won the national championship.
Zander's facts.
And then I picked the Bucks, and I've probably made a ton of other predictions that are true. Plus, when I looked up King of Facts on Google, the only thing I found were random facts about Martin Luther King. So I think I'm okay.
Zander warned you.
King of Facts. The new King of Facts. You're welcome. I'm going to need someone to throne me, though. We're going to have to get the queen herself, maybe, on this podcast, the Zander's Facts podcast, to throne Zander as the King of Facts. Or maybe, I don't know. I don't think Prince Harry does that stuff anymore. I don't even think he's a prince. Ooh.
Sick burn.
Well, but there you go. NBA Finals. It turned out the way I told you it was going to. I don't know why you doubted Zander and his facts. The podcast is literally named Zander's Facts. So you think I'd be spewing lies? No, I'm spewing facts.
Dad, Zander's spreading lies.
So if you made a lot of money, you're welcome. Zander's Facts. That's all I've got, though, on basketball. Because now it's late and my head's starting to hurt and I'm tired. So now we're going to get in to our next part of the podcast. Everyone's favorite topic of politics. And then everyone's favorite politics topic, or news, I guess. It should be politics, but it is. COVID-Rona. Everyone's favorite virus. And everyone's least favorite virus, all at the same time. Isn't that amazing?
Awful.
We're going to talk about it with a very special guest this week because there's some issues going on. I've actually led into this for a couple weeks now. I said, we're going to start talking about COVID again. Well, we're talking about it again. There's some issues going on right now. We talked about vaccines a couple weeks ago, why you should get one. Well, the vaccination rate has continued to lower. So much so that the White House, the president, missed on its goal of having 70% or so of adults in this country being vaccinated. They wound up short. Oh no.
Terrible.
Pretty terrible. Because people won't get vaccinated. Why? We're going to talk about it because while the vaccination rate is lowering, something else is not lowering. It is the case rate for COVID. It's going back up, people. And that's not good because we're starting to see more hospitalizations. And all these people seemingly are not vaccinated. What do you know? So the White House is trying to do stuff. They're promoting the vaccine now. Last week, they had singer and actress Olivia Rodrigo at the White House. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, that's not good for you.
Fight me.
You need to go listen. But the White House is trying to promote vaccines. But we're going to talk about all that here as the Zander's Facts podcast continues. COVID, Rona, let's talk about it right now. Zander's Facts, let's go.
Zander's Facts.
Welcome back to episode 25 of the Zander's Facts podcast. We've got a ton to talk about on the quarter century mark for the Zander's Facts podcast. It's a big podcast and a big guest for the first time ever. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome in Nurse Laura. We're talking all about COVID this week. Nurse Laura, welcome into the Zander's Facts podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We've got a ton to talk about this week. We're going to talk all COVID, Rona, China virus. Is it real? Maybe. No one knows.
That's not true.
All right. So first off, what we're going to talk about is what's going on right now. Because COVID is once again becoming a big deal because as we've mentioned on this podcast, we've been getting people vaccinated, even though now that's whatever, because not as many people are getting vaccinated. So the 7-day average for doses administered of the COVID-19 vaccine right now, as of July 18th, which is Sunday, was 500,000. That's a big number. However, compared to the beginning of June 1st, that number was 1,212,000. And at its peak, back in mid-April, it was over 3.5 million.
That's a fact.
So we've seen if you look at the charts online, you can see steady growth from December up until April, and then steady decrease from April until now. So that wouldn't be as big a problem if people weren't getting COVID. However, they are at a larger rate than before. So right now, the current 7-day average for new COVID cases in the US is 26,300. That's an increase of 69%, nice, compared with the previous week's 7-day moving average of 15,000.
It's the truth.
So we're seeing an increase. That's not anywhere close to what it was back in beginning of this year or the fall or the spring, but it's still an increase of 69% compared to the previous week. And from 2 weeks ago, it's an increase of 145%. So two things are happening right now that we don't want. We're seeing a decrease in the level of vaccinations, and we're seeing an increase in the level of COVID cases. Nurse Laura, why is that happening right now in mid-July 2021?
Well, they've been warning us for a long time now about this Delta variant and how prolific it is at replicating and passing from one person to another. It's also a lot more virulent, so it's going to make you sick, more sick. So that, plus we have the vaccine rates that are going down, and I think we're kind of assuming that people are buying into the misinformation and myths that are out there about vaccines, especially the COVID vaccines. And then there's also people who feel like COVID has just gone away and that we've somehow cured it.
Really?
Well, some people didn't think it was real to begin with, but you know. There's a whole other thing you mentioned in there, misinformation. We're going to talk about that because back on Saturday, the chief medical advisor to the president, Dr. Anthony Fauci, our boy on this podcast, he was asked by CNN, quote, this is the question, do you think we could have eradicated polio or defeated the measles if you had Fox News night after night warning people about these vaccine issues that are just bunk, unquote. And Fauci answered, quote, if we had the pushback for vaccines the way we're seeing on certain media, I don't think it would have been possible at all to not only eradicate smallpox, we probably would still have smallpox, and we probably would still have polio in this country, unquote. I mean,
Spitting the truth.
Well, you definitely have a catch-22 between the freedom of speech and misinformation about vaccines and coronavirus. The problem with that is that coronavirus is actually killing people. And so the misinformation and the people that are putting that out there are certainly not doing their part at philanthropy and their love for their neighbor, because that is actually helping their neighbor to possibly die. So
very Christian of them.
It's probably not a good thing. So we do have this problem, and we definitely in this country appreciate and really we're very fortunate to have freedom of speech.
Zander's facts.
But when we have people that are talking about nonsense and things that are not true, and that's actually a detriment to people's lives and their health, then it becomes a problem.
That's leveling off the vaccination rate we've got right now. As of the total population, 49.1% of the population in the US is fully vaccinated. That's 161 million people. And that was recently passed by Canada, our northern neighbor. They're over 50% now because their vaccine rate is still going up and ours just keeps going down, Fox News and all that stuff. And the president said a couple of days ago, Facebook is killing people. And then he had to say, well, Facebook's not the one killing people. Mark Zuckerberg's not out there with a sledgehammer killing people or whatnot. But Facebook is allowing for these lies to be spread on their platform. And we're going to talk about more misinformation and myths in a second. But first, let's go to the vaccine, because there are a lot of people, apparently, 50% of the population. Well, actually, that includes children. So it's more like 25% of the adult population that I guess they don't want to get the vaccine or they think it's terrible. So why should they get the vaccine in the first place?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why people don't get the vaccine. And I care for a lot of patients who have said, I was meaning to get the vaccine, but I just hadn't done it yet.
Terrible.
So the importance of getting the vaccine now is because we do have this Delta variant. It is a lot more severe than the Alpha. You can get sicker. It's being passed quicker. So it is important to get the vaccine. Don't put it off, because you could get sick.
That's a big fact.
And I know that it's hard to think about being sick when you're not sick, but when you do get sick with it, it's not fun. For those that have symptoms, it's not a good time. And you really don't know. It's really, you really don't know who's going to get it bad and who's not. So you can get COVID even if you have the vaccine, but it really reduces your chances of a hospitalization sickness.
It's pretty easy to get the vaccine too. I mean, you can just go down to your local pharmacy. You could walk, probably some people. And then, because nobody wants it anymore, apparently, there's no line, get the shot, wait for 15 minutes to make sure you don't go crazy.
Oops.
And then you're off. And then you have to go do that if you get the Pfizer or the Moderna one a month later or so. Like, it doesn't take that much time. People are just being lazy if they say that. Like, come on.
Quit whining.
Well, you can also get the Johnson & Johnson shot. That one is just a one-time deal. So you don't even have to come back for that one.
So you mentioned earlier about people not wanting it because they believe all this crazy stuff. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk into the misinformation, and let's play a little game. One of my favorite games ever, but something we've never played on the Zander's Facts podcast. Fact or fiction? I'm going to tell you all this crazy stuff, and you're going to tell me if it's fact or fiction.
Original.
Nurse Laura. So first off, can you get COVID from the vaccine? Fact or fiction?
Fiction. You cannot get coronavirus from the vaccine.
Are you sure?
100%.
100%. How about that? Okay.
How about that?
We know the long-term side effects of the vaccine. Fact or fiction?
Fiction. We do not know the long-term side effects, which may be a reason why some people are choosing not to get it and maybe waiting to see what everybody's symptoms might be a little further out. A little story that I just had an experience.
Story time.
Story time. So there was 3 healthcare workers in the hospital where I work. We all work on the same unit. We all got the Pfizer vaccine in December, late December. We were one of the first hospitals to get it. We all got our first shots late December and, of course, got the subsequent shot 3 weeks later. And just recently, in the past month, the 2 months, we all have had left knee pain and swelling. Now, these are people, one of them's in their 50s, I'm in my 40s, and then somebody in their 20s. I thought for me, it was age related. I was just getting old. I was on my feet too often, doing too much, but maybe not. So then we thought, well, I wonder if this is one of the side effects of the COVID vaccine. We don't know that. We just kind of surmise that maybe that's what it is. But the 24-year-old who has the same problem is telling me that one of her friends who's 26 got COVID and a month or so later is still having problems breathing. So this is someone in their 20s still suffering from the effects of COVID. She said, I think I'll take my knee pain rather than having breathing problems. So there could be side effects of the vaccine. It could be joint pain, knee pain. I don't know, but it's much better than what could happen to you.
Well, and the thing is, there's tons of vaccines out there like you have to take. Like to go to a university or a certain job, you have to get certain vaccines, especially when you're younger.
You.
Like out of all the vaccines that the FDA has approved, you can't find a single one that has a major side effect long term. Yellow fever, polio, measles, flu, all that stuff. Like they don't. So it would be safe to assume that this one does not as well. But Zander's facts.
Cool facts, bro.
Right. And I think that even when we decided to get the vaccine, when we were one of the first groups to get it, and we had the choice to get it or not, the hospital did not require it. So it was my choice to get it. I thought I want to protect others, but I feel like, we need to stop COVID in its tracks. The only way we're going to do that is to get the vaccine.
Book it.
And that's another reason why we should get the vaccine, because it doesn't only just protect you, it also protects the people around you. Like what we were talking about last year with the whole mask thing, because these are the same people who don't want to wear their masks, even though that would end COVID, and they're all whiny. Wearing masks doesn't just protect you, it protects others. And so that's another reason to get the vaccine, because when you don't, you're hurting the people around you, even if they're vaccinated. Let's go. Another one. Fact or fiction? I've already been vaccinated. I've already had COVID, so I don't need to be vaccinated. Fact or fiction?
Well, you can get COVID again. And like we were just saying, you can spread COVID. So that would be fiction.
Jeez.
There's been patients that have had COVID a couple times. The second time, they got it much worse than the first time. So, you're not safe even if you've had COVID.
The vaccine will hurt, not for me, but for females. The vaccine will hurt my fertility. Fact or fiction?
Fiction.
Sick burn.
No, it does not hurt your fertility. And it is important for pregnant women to get the vaccine because just pregnancy in general reduces your immunity. So you definitely want to have that extra immunity.
Another one here. If I get the vaccine, it will put a microchip inside of me that Bill Gates can track. Fact or fiction?
Tell me.
Well, that is something that a lot of people think is true. You know, they have a vial, they have a small vial of the vaccine solution, and they draw up I think it's 5 doses from each vial. So I'm not sure how they can just get one chip in through that needle chip into your muscle. I don't know, but yeah. So if you have a cell phone, Bill Gates can track you. So I think your cell phone is probably a little more scary than the vaccine.
You get off Facebook. Well, maybe some people have more than one chip inside of them.
That was dumb.
I won't be able to afford the vaccine.
It's free. The government pays for it so that you can get it for free.
I feel like that's socialist government, Sleepy Joe.
I don't know.
I feel like all of these are fiction. I'm going to try to get a fact one. This won't be fact, though. I will not get this because the vaccine only has full FDA, or it does not have full FDA approval. It only has emergency use authorization. Is that a reason not to get the vaccine?
No, that's not a reason
No, not.
not to get the vaccine. It has been studied for a long time. The technology has been studied for a while. Millions of people have gotten it. It's safe. It's much better than getting COVID.
And FDA approval usually takes a year or two. And so we're actually, expecting to see the Pfizer and the Moderna and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines be fully approved by the FDA, I believe, early next year. So hopefully it'll be then. But because they developed them starting in, March or so, it takes time. Okay, here we go. Last one. Are you ready?
Here we go.
I'm young and healthy, but I should still get the vaccine. Fact or fiction?
That's a fact.
Fact, yes, Zander's facts.
Zander's facts.
Young and healthy people need to get the vaccine. Even if you don't get COVID very bad, you can have long-lasting side effects. And you don't really know when it completely goes away, because months later you could have a blood clot or you could have heart arrhythmias. There's lots of things that have been documented as far as side effects that people have had after they have, quote unquote, gotten over COVID.
Yeah. People, months after they had COVID, people can have chronic fatigue, chest pain, brain fog, shortness of breath, like all these things that you didn't have before. And you're like, why do I have these? Because you had COVID.
What?
And now you can do something about it. Plus, young people can be sneaky, easy transmitters of coronavirus a lot, because it can be easier for young people to have the virus but not show symptoms, an asymptomatic patient basically. And they can be easy transmitters of it. There have been multiple outbreaks at summer camps this year. And actually a study back in February found that almost 30% of people who had COVID-19 still had symptoms up to 9 months after they first got it.
What do you say?
It's a long time.
Gotta get vaccinated. Zander's facts.
What are you implying?
So we talked about, all right, there's your game of fact or fiction. We only had one Zander's fact in there, but that was kind of how the questions were worded. So let's, I guess, more about misinformation about COVID. Other things that people are spreading that may be lies about not just the vaccines, but COVID in general. What are some of those things that can be easily debunked with a quick Zander's fact?
Well, I think some of the things that people say, first of all, it's not true. I mean, it never happened. It's all a farce. COVID is not real.
Ugh.
Some people say that.
Yes, some people say that. Some people still say that. And it's really interesting. The patients that we have that don't believe in it, but have it, will say, do you believe in it now? We had one patient that died of it, and I think never believed that he had it, because it became so political so quickly. And so there are definitely two sides. I mean, that goes along with the treatment of it as well. It's just become, whether you're conservative or you're liberal, whether or not you believe certain things.
Well, I don't even understand that, because the former president, our boy, Donnie Boy,
Ugh.
I mean, he is a couple days ago, he sent out one of his infamous press releases touting Operation Warp Speed, which gave funding to the companies that helped develop the vaccines. So he's taking credit for the vaccines.
This makes absolutely no sense.
So I just don't even, But you also mentioned treatment. So let's get into that. Let's get into a little of what you actually have experienced over the past year and a half now of COVID at the hospital, in the ICU, in intensive care. Basically for the past year and a half now, because we're in July, it's been going on in hospitals since January, basically in the US. So, or that we know of. So, what have those experiences been like, treatment?
Well, initially, we really didn't have anything to treat COVID patients with. And then we started getting some drugs that have been approved for treatment. There have been several different drugs that we've treated patients with that after we used it for a while, research showed that they didn't work. And then we've had drugs that have come out and for some reason it got very political, such as with the Plaquenil.
What is that?
That's the drug that the president took.
Oh, you mean Regeneron.
No, not Regeneron.
Remdesivir?
No, not
Bleach?
not Remdesivir.
A few minutes later.
Hydroxychloroquine.
Yes, that one. Yes, so we definitely have had an interesting ride in the last year and a half. When we started getting these patients, we didn't know how to treat them. It was scary. We wore these hazmat suits, then it took forever to put on, and it was just really super scary. I remember being on the team that intubated our very first ICU coronavirus patient, and how scary it was. That patient actually survived, even though she was super, super, super sick, and it took probably 3 good weeks to actually get a test back to tell us that she actually had coronavirus. The testing was horrible. It was slow. We didn't really have treatment. I remember looking back on those days and it was pretty frustrating. It was a psychological kind of warfare for us because we didn't know. We just didn't know. We didn't know if we were going to be protected. We didn't know what we were going to run into. We didn't know what our patients were going to be like. We just didn't know anything. And then we started getting more and more course patients. I think probably the worst was this past winter when we had a whole unit full of patients and we were actually putting 2 patients in one room because we had so many of them. So anyway, we're still studying all these drugs. We really don't have anything that really cures COVID. We don't. So once you get COVID, it's really kind of a crapshoot whether or not you're going to get better. Really, your best bet is to get vaccinated and to never get it. We were placing patients on their stomachs, proning them so that we could oxygenate the backs of their lungs, which has a lot more volume than the front. It was horrible watching people die over and over again and not being able to treat them, not being able to help them.
Terrible.
Yeah, we really still don't know any treatment that will 100% we know will work, and you don't want to get put on the ventilator.
No, the ventilator is not. That was another thing. People were saying that the ventilator was killing people. The ventilator only helps you breathe when you can't breathe yourself. So the ventilator is actually helping you. It's life support, but it will help you if you can't breathe. So that's why people are put on the ventilator. Ventilators don't kill people.
So that was all basically, we all saw the stories early on about New York and the hospitals were just packed and all these urban areas. This is Virginia in a relatively rural area. This happened. These are experiences that happened everywhere.
That's right.
Around the US, not just in these big New York and LA and DC places.
No, it's facing it anywhere you went. COVID everywhere.
And and as we said, there still is COVID, but there is a way to treat it now. It's called the vaccine.
That's right.
Mostly. The stats actually back that up because last month in June in Maryland, every single person who died of COVID was not vaccinated. And in the US last month, about 99%, over 99% of the individuals who died from COVID were not vaccinated.
Quick facts.
And now when we still have ICU admissions of people who have COVID, they are not vaccinated either. So when the vaccine came out, it was supposed to have a 95% efficacy. So that means that there's a 95% chance that you're not going to get COVID, or that you get COVID that's not very bad. So that's amazing. And one of our physicians, I'll never forget, he said, this is huge. This is like as big as the invention of penicillin. He said, this changes lives.
Wow.
And it does. It will change lives if people would get the vaccine and actually trust that it's going to work, because it's going to keep people out of hospitals and it's going to keep people alive.
Vaccines eradicated polio.
That's cool.
Like last year, the flu infection rate, there was a huge drop off from 2019 in 2020 for the flu rate, because everybody was social distancing, wearing masks, not going out. And now it's going to probably climb up this fall and winter. And a lot of that, like we're seeing with the Delta variant, it happened as COVID evolved, science evolved, but COVID got stronger. And scientists and a lot of people are afraid that if we let COVID stay out there, there's more and more people who are getting it now, that it's going to continue to evolve to become stronger, and that at some point the vaccines that we have now might not be as effective. And so then we're going to have to start getting booster shots, which we're probably going to have to get anyway, but then we're going to have to find, stronger vaccines that work against stronger variants, unless we reach what they're saying is herd immunity, which is 75% of the total population, they said. And since we're not even at 50% right now, that might be a long way off. So now we're looking at people just saying, well, let's just live with COVID like we live with the flu. I mean, that's a real possibility right now, is that we could literally have a COVID season like we have the flu season.
Yeah, and we may very well have that. It's very unfortunate because COVID can make you a lot sicker than the flu can. Just thinking back, my 27 years as an ICU nurse, and I can remember less than 10, maybe less than 5 patients that have died of the flu in that whole time period in the ICU. But COVID, there's a lot more than that. And that was just a year and a half. People just, they don't understand. Even nurses in the hospital, they will say, I never understood until I came into the ICU, because we had to pull people from all over the hospital to come help us. And when nurses would come from different floors and come help us and see what we actually did with these patients and what these patients were going through, they were just shocked.
Yep. And if we didn't have all this misinformation out there, like it's amazing how when the polio vaccine was out there, we didn't have, as Fauci mentioned earlier, we didn't have Fox News or Facebook or any of that right wing, all that garbage stuff out there. You had Walter Cronkite telling you what was going on every evening. That was how you got your news. So I don't know. There you go. But
that was a fact.
As we wrap up Nurse Laura's first appearance on the Zander's Facts podcast, I mean, any final thoughts? We've got trying to get people vaccinated, because there's a lot of people who aren't, and there might be some people who are on the fence listening to this podcast. Final thoughts, Nurse Laura. COVID vaccines, all that.
So I think I would just like to say that COVID is real. COVID's out there. I think most of the COVID we have now is the Delta variant. We have a treatment for it. It's called a vaccine. We need to get vaccinated. Let's get this thing done.
Yep.
We can get rid of COVID. I would love to get rid of COVID. I hate COVID. COVID has been part of my life for the last year and a half. And it's evil.
Evil!
And it's mean, and it does terrible things to people. So let's get rid of it. Let's get vaccinated. It's easy. Don't put it off. It's free.
The truth.
Very controversial statements there by Nurse Laura. But anyways, thank you, Nurse Laura, for coming on Zander's Facts podcast, spreading the facts about vaccines. Zander's Facts. Thank you once again.
Thanks for having me.
This is Zander's Facts.
Thanks again to Nurse Luro, for coming on the Zander's Facts podcast. That's all we've got for you this week. We talked NBA Finals, another correct prediction by King Zander, the king of facts. Can you believe it?
That's blasphemous.
And then we talked about COVID, Rona, and why you should get your vaccine. So if you don't have your vaccine, maybe you should get it. Maybe you should go get your driver's license and start driving through the suburbs and get it. Sorry, a reference.
Man, that was rough.
That is all we've got this week on the Zander's Facts podcast. Thank you all for listening. Episode 25. Quarter century mark. Next week, we're going to talk about, though, NBA season review. I don't even know. But the NBA draft is next week, so maybe we'll have a little precursor again to who your favorite team's going to get. The Heat, the Wizards. Nobody's going to get any good players.
That's not a fact.
Episode 26 is next week. Plus, a couple weeks ago, remember we talked about infrastructure, and I said, well, there's the bipartisan infrastructure bill, then there's the bill that the Democrats are going to go on. Well, we finally know what's in the Democrats' bill. We're going to talk about that, so you know what the Congress is voting on. We're going to talk about all that. Maybe not next week. Zander's Facts, who knows? We'll see. But thank you all again for listening to episode 25 of the Zander's Facts podcast. And remember, if you liked the podcast, if you liked all the facts and the king of facts, then remember to click that follow button, download, rate, review the podcast, and then go on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the socials. Follow, like, subscribe, retweet, Reddit, I don't even know. And most importantly, make sure to tell all your friends that Zander picked the Bucks to win in 6 games before the finals started. And then make sure to tell all your friends that Zander told you to go get the vaccine and get your driver's license. And then, if you can, and then make sure to tell all your friends that Zander picked the Bucks to win the finals before the playoffs started.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Just to remind you. That's it. That is a wrap on episode 25 of the Zander's Facts podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see y'all next week.
Deal with it.